All right, the second thing that I want to kind of talk to you guys about is farming. Um, so farming, I think, especially right now, what you're doing is really you're building your pipeline. There are going to be agents that are going to stop farm. They're not going to do as many as they did before. And this isn't a perfect opportunity, I think, for you to start farming your neighborhood or the neighborhood that you want to be concentrating on. So just to kind of dive into the farming section of it, you definitely want to be looking at a neighborhood first and foremost that you are enjoy selling the product you enjoy selling, holding open houses at, right? Agents ask me all the time, well, what is the number one thing that you look for when you start farming? And for me, it's not even the agent saturation, although that's important. It's not even really a turnover rate. It's more about, am I really going to enjoy selling in that neighborhood? Am I going to be able to enjoy holding open houses in that neighborhood or showing homes in that neighborhood? So that's not, for me, number one criteria. Number two is agent saturation. You want to make sure that you in the farm where you don't have a dominating agent. And what I mean by dominating, I means that an agent that doesn't do more than 10% of the transactions in that neighborhood. And then the third thing is you want to make sure that the turnover rate is ideally more than 5%. Most of the neighborhoods in town are going to be at around 5%, 5 or 6%. There are some neighborhoods in Buckeye where that number is more like 9 or 10%. But here in Northwest Valley, where we based out of, it's at around 5%. Another thing that I look at is the commission check or the actual price of the house, if you will. For me, I want to be in the neighborhood where the average price point is going to be at least $400,000, ideally more like a $500,000, for a couple of different reasons. Number one, obviously, the commission checks are going to be higher. Number two is the type of buyer that you're going to be attracting. They're going to be looking more getting a conventional loans, or maybe cash buyers, if you will. And number three, that's a hedge against, the iBuyer purchase program, if you will, their investment scope. A lot of iBuyers, it looks like they're somewhat hesitant to spend more than $500,000 on a house. So you want to be in the area where the average price point is at least $450,000, $400,000, or $500,000 or up. What we do is we send a bi-weekly jumbo of branded postcards. They go out to the neighborhood. We used to do a neighborhood newspaper. We stopped with that. It just didn't really see that many results from that, and it was pretty expensive. And then when we used to, obviously during the normal times, we used to do neighborhood exclusive open houses for the new listings. And I teach a separate class on neighborhood exclusive open houses. For us, it was a game changer in terms of not only marketing our new listings, but more importantly, building our seller pipeline for the next months and years to come in a specific neighborhood. Just to kind of give you a quick overview, before the house goes on the market or as it goes on the market that day, we would invite all the neighbors to stop by the open house. We only invite neighbors. We offer wine and cheese. We do barbecue, different prizes, if you will, to win. We usually get anywhere between 25 to 30 people that will show up, groups, and they will show up. They will, stick around. They will drink wine or beer, and they will eat cheese, and they will, share their stories, and they talk about their plans. And by the end of the evening, we usually get about 5 to 10 legit seller leads. Now we have their information, we have their email address, their phone numbers, and we have their motivation, their plans. Not all of them are going to be ready to do something in the next 5 or 6 months, but that's okay. In the next year or 2 or 3 years, these are the people that we follow up with, that we stay in touch with, that will sell and also buy. So last month we spent about $70,000 in our farm, and we generated $170,000 gross commission income. And this is just from direct listings. That's not including, you know, the deals we probably close from sign calls or open houses, you know, or some other ways where we generated business from our listings. What also works for us, in addition to the postcards and in addition to the open houses, is social media presence for those neighborhoods. Circle prospecting is another thing that we do. We call neighborhoods and invite them to the open houses, or let them know that we have an active buyer or two that is looking to buy a house in their neighborhood. So we do that in addition to the postcards and then the open houses. The more presence you have, the better it's going to look for you. It's going to be better for you, your brand, obviously for your clients, the sellers, right? And then, you know, the neighbors, they're going to see your signs, they're going to see your open house signs, they're going to see your flyers, and then they're going to hear you over the phone. They're going to see you on social media, Facebook, and all of those, you know, combining all of those things together, you're going to have a solid farm for the next months and years to come. Here's a quick tip. Farming is not inexpensive. It's not cheap. You must have at least 6 months of a budget. You got to stay consistent. In fact, with the farming, what you want to do is you want to, if you're going to start a new farm, and this is some of the bonus tips, is you want to start with 10 straight weeks of mailers. So if you're starting a brand new farm and you know, you want to get some presence there, you got to start with 10 weeks of mailers. Every single week, they got to get a piece from you. And in addition to it, ideally, you also want to do some social media activity, whether it's doing a market update for that particular subdivision or that particular neighborhood, holding some sort of a community event, whether it's a movie in the park or bingo night. And then again, when things get normalized, definitely leveraging that listing with multiple open houses. We typically, on our vacant homes in our farm, we would hold anywhere between 3 to 5 open houses a week. And we put out anywhere between 25 to 40 signs, okay? So as you can see, you know, maximum exposure, lots of signs, lots of information about us. Neighbors are constantly seeing that. And to be honest with you, they appreciate us more. They see us, they see our agents working every single day, trying to sell the listing, okay? And of course, the neighbors will show up and we have a conversation with them. We get their information and now they're on our database, okay? The secret is you gotta stay consistent. Obviously also you wanna have a unique selling proposition, especially nowadays, whether it's a guaranteed offer situation, if you work with the investors that are still in the market to buy, whether it's being flexible on your commissions, you gotta come up with some sort of a unique selling propositions to get them go on your website or have them call you. So that's important. And like I said, a budget of 6 months. I remember my first deal came in not until like about 6 or 7 months after I started my farm. But you got to give it at least 12 months and you're going to start seeing results. Another cool thing about farming is the fact that, you know, we're not really dependent on some other lead sources out there that we have to pay money for. Like, nothing against companies like you know, Zillow and then, you know, a bunch of other ones, you know, where you pay them and then they're pretty much have a control of how much business they send your way. And one day they may not send you any business at all. With farming, right, you're in control of your destiny, you're in control of your business, you're in control of your lead sources, you're focusing on the sellers versus the buyers. And with the sellers, of course, you know, there's a commission check not only from selling their house, but also most likely going to be buying a house. And there are also maybe possibly additional commission checks if you leverage that listing correctly, from open houses, from sign calls, from online advertising. So one listing can generate 4, 5, 6, 7 possible commission checks, you know, and that's huge. And plus, with the listings, you spend much less time administering and working the listings than you spending working with the buyers. On average, You know, in our company, our team, for instance, we're talking about 8 to 10 hours from the time we meet with the seller to the time we close on the deal. Whereas if you're working with a buyer, especially nowadays, we're talking about 35, 40, 50 hours working with a buyer. Okay.